I want to lift up two extremely important ideas that we, the Pyramid Chess Club and the Pyramid Horizons Mathematics Academy, try to focus on every 60 seconds. Those two principles are repetition, and that is going to deal with one of the main powers of the subconscious mind, and the second is analysis, which is paired with critical thinking. And I'm going to try to show you as well as I can a mesh between the two in studying just a little bitty aspect of how Beethoven, who was deaf when he composed those pieces that dumbfounded the world, I'm going to explain as best as I can from what I've studied how he did it. And the process of how he did it starts with understanding what happens when we hear. Specifically, what happens when infants hear patterns played on the piano, when they hear them and when they see them. I'm going to focus on the hearing part, okay?
收拾心情，收拾心情，好激昂㗎，好激昂嘅，知唔知啊？每一下要撞爛啲石頭。
And what I want to start with is the human cochlea. The human cochlea is an organ that's shaped according to vortex mathematics. What I mean when I say that is it literally does this. It just twists down and down and down, excuse me. At the top of the cochlea is the apex. At the bottom of the cochlea is our base. There is a membrane laced in between the cochlea called the basilar membrane. And it goes all the way down through everyone. I'm going to highlight it in red. The basilar membrane is basically like a really flexible, soft, organic piano. And I'm going to explain what I mean when I say that. It looks exactly like the piano looks. Those keys on the piano, and it functions. These keys on the basilar membrane function like the keys on the piano. The piano, though, is a product of someone studying the cochlea of the human. Okay? So let's just envision the piano keys. Let's say we pick them up and we lay them out and we make them real flexible and lace them together. And then we take them and we lay them on a surface that's twisting down like a vortex. That's what's going on in this basilar membrane. There are individual spots, I'll call them sections or areas on the basilar membrane that represent our keys. And when we hear a pitch or a frequency, wherever that pitch or frequency is located in the basilar membrane is the key that it hits. Say, for example, if we heard, or let's take, for example, Beethoven. Say if Beethoven heard the frequency of the key A4 on the piano. The frequency of A4 is 440 hertz, okay? So when the sound comes in, it goes through, not a long process, but a process that amplifies the wave, makes it quote-unquote louder or higher pitched, so that when it finally hits the water that's located inside of the cochlea, that's going to transfer its frequency to the basilar membrane, it's not slowed down. By the time it hits the water, it's the same exact frequency as it was when it started off outside of your ear, okay? So when it comes in, it travels down through the water in the cochlea, and the vibration rate that's carried in the water is transferred to our basilar membrane, okay? membrane. Okay, so we're here in 440. 440 is relatively mid-pitch, so I'd say it'd be about right here on the basilar membrane. When the basilar membrane realizes, or the neurons in the basilar membrane realizes that it's hearing A4, then in essence, you just imagine it pressing down that key. Imagine that frequency stopping and pressing down that key. As that key is pressed down, I'm going to try to draw a quick illustration of a piano key. There are tiny hairs located under each key that are called inner hair cells. And these inner hair cells convert the information that's telling it that it's a frequency of 440 hertz into an action potential, an electrical impulse that's sent down through the neurons in the hair cell, down through to the organ of corti, which takes it to the vestibular cochlear nerve. The vestibular cochlear nerve. And the vestibular cochlear nerve takes that information as an action potential or as an electrical impulse up to the thalamus. And the thalamus in our brain is like a little stick. Right, it goes right up to the middle of our head. So let's just imagine an illustration. Say that's our head and this is our ear, or let's just ignore the ear. This is the thalamus right here, okay? So when it hits the thalamus, the information is carried out again in neural pathways out to the auditory cortex. And the auditory cortex is located right here above our ears, okay? Inside the auditory cortex is what is called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is what is responsible for being able to take a memory that you have stored in your subconscious mind and make it an action. This is the process that Beethoven went through when he was playing these beautiful pieces, when he was deaf, when he couldn't hear them. He accessed the information stored in his hypothalamus and made them an action, very literally. What the right hypothalamus does is it follows the pattern of what it is. It's right mind, the subconscious mind, storing patterns. It just stores the memories. And what happened was, what is really key, this is the repetition point. Beethoven's teachers and his father made him sit and play the piano over and over and over again, same patterns. And they played those same patterns to him. So what happens is, the more that our brain receives the same group of information, it stores it in a neuron, basically, in a neural network, in a neuron in the dendrite, okay? The more that we see or hear that pattern, however it is, to whatever sense it is, the more that we receive that information, the stronger that neural connection gets. Once you do it so many times, 21 to be exact, it becomes permanent. It can't be erased.
Who's the judge?
Okay?
The judge is God. Why is he God? Because he decides to win or lose it, not my opponent. Who's your opponent? He doesn't exist. Why doesn't he exist? Because he is merely a decision fortune who not speak. Who's the judge? The judge is God. Why is he God? Because he decides to win or lose it, not my opponent. Who's your opponent? He doesn't exist. Why does he not exist? Because he is merely a decision fortune who not speak. Who's the judge? The judge is God. Louder. The judge is God. Why is he God? Because he decides to win or lose it, not my opponent. Who's your opponent? He doesn't exist. Why does he not exist? Because he is merely a decision fortune who not speak. Speak the truth. Speak the truth.
So as Beethoven was hearing these patterns and playing these patterns, all the information of how to play it and what they sounded like became stored in his hypothalamus, in his auditory cortex. When it came time for him to play them when he was deaf, which was around the age of 32, which is when he went completely deaf, he was able to access it with his left hypothalamus through his right hypothalamus. What the job of the left hypothalamus is that it grabs the different information. Say, for example, if Beethoven wanted to play a D major triplet or a D major triad, what the right hypothalamus does is it finds that D major triad in Beethoven's memories, and then it basically gives it to the left hypothalamus, and the left hypothalamus converts that into an electrical impulse, sends it down to the muscles that are going to be necessary to play it, and then you play it. The only different ones at this point, Beethoven couldn't actually hear it, but he was still able to play it. So this is an example of repetition and Beethoven constantly repeating, hearing these patterns and playing these patterns in conjunction with the ability to analyze and to think critically about how he was able to do it. Because now what this means is, if I'm a classical piano player and I want to be able to repeat or remake or improve upon the genius of Beethoven, I have the mathematical mechanics as to how to do it. There is another mathematical perspective that I do want to go over really quickly, because that was a raw mechanical point of view. To show the beauty in the mathematics involved, I'm just going to take one quick excerpt from Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. It was the 50th measure, I believe. This was the D major triad I was talking about. And it's made up of the A4 key, which has a frequency of 440 hertz. And I'm just going to write the equation out real quick. I won't have time to explain it. But the function for, we're going to graph the sine waves of these frequencies, these different keys. And the function for A4 is y of t equals sine, in parentheses, 2 pi times the frequency, which is 440 hertz, and then times your time. Okay, so this D major triad is made up of the A4 key, the F sharp 4 key, and I'm just going to copy the equation down real quick so we can get to the point that I want to make. So it's y of t equals sine 2 pi 370 hertz t, and then the last key is D4, and the function for D4 is y of t equals sine 2 pi 294 hertz t. So I'm just going to draw a quick, it's not going to be perfect, it's going to be more like an estimation of what these would look like, because I want to show you the mathematical form or expression of harmony. So I'm going to draw a quick portion of an XY graph. T is going to be the time, F is going to be the frequency, and this is 0. Now this is at the point on our timeline of 0.042 seconds. Okay, I'm gonna do it real quick. So A4, okay, so you see, this is the sine wave, this is the graph of the sound, the frequency that these three keys make, and look at how many times they meet up. This is just in 0.042 seconds. This is not even in 0.42 seconds. This is like 0.05 seconds. Basically what this is, 0.042 seconds. And they meet up twice already. This is the mathematical expression of harmony. Now, and you see these patterns played out in several of the pieces that Beethoven composed between the ages of 32 and 57, which is when he died. So this is another example of being able to analyze and critique. And there is a man by the name of James Sylvester. I think he was a poet. And there's a quote. I won't deal with the whole quote, but I do like what he said. He said that the musician feels mathematics, meaning that they are able to play the mathematics of the sound that they produce. So that's just a really quick picture of what that looks like. And what that means is I'm working on playing a couple of Beethoven's pieces. I think it's 2 or 3 of them, and 1 Chopin piece and 1 Mozart piece. And what I'm able to do is I'm able to understand how Beethoven did it, so I can literally repeat how well or how thoroughly and how beautifully he was able to play his music just by listening to his music and by reading the music or, watching the video or whatever it is to be able to play it. A young mathematician by the name of Jonathan W. Stokes took Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, it's probably his most explosive piece, and he translated each musical note of the Ninth Symphony into the algebraic notation of a chessboard, and therefore he got the corresponding chess game to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And again, you see that same mathematical harmony that you saw in Moonlight Sonata in his Ninth Symphony, except this time you see it in the mathematical symmetry of a chess game. And I need to note that this piece was also composed during the time period when Beethoven was completely deaf. So now I have to ask, was Beethoven a critical analyzer? Was he an obsessive chess player? Stay tuned.